Welcome, one and all, to the Defiant Takes Football Show. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean, and we are back to pick an entire Super Wildcard Weekend slate of games against the spread. So, first Wildcard Weekend together, boys. I've got Kyle Nishida and Brison Owens, as always. Kyle, how you doing today? Are you excited for the games that come, even though our teams are not involved?
I am pretty excited. It's kind of a very weird slate in the sense that half the games are literally teetering between around the field goal line, and then the other three are literally two-score games, like convincing two-score spreads. So, um, you it feels like three outright favorites are the way to go, but you never know. This is kind of one of those weird weekends where you see a lot of contenders and pretenders face off against one another.
Yeah, especially because of the backup situations that are
hmm
involved here. But we'll get to it. I mean, if I were a fan of some of these teams, I would have pretty tight butt today. Bryson, how you doing today?
I'm doing really well. I love the NFL playoffs. Even though the Broncos aren't in it, and I live in a state where currently the Denver Nuggets are the number one seed in the West. We have the reigning Stanley Cup champions. The NFL playoffs are always my favorite playoffs to watch because I just love the fact that it's win or go home every game, and you have to have your best game and your best performance every time. And so it makes, even with these backups in, you have to account for them. You have to make sure you game plan against them well. And I love the NFL playoffs because of that.
Truly, I mean, next week is my favorite because of the number of games and the general quality of opponents. But there's nothing like playoff football. I mean, yeah, March Madness is fun. Um, but the true win or go home nature of each game back to back to back makes it's just a good time in general. All right. So I suppose we'll get into it. It won't be the longest show. We've only got 6 games to pick, so we can kind of take our time with it. But we're going to pick these games against the spread. It's a pretty tight race right now. I think, Bryson, you kind of stepped ahead of us last week, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of, I think it was one of those where the team I thought was going to won, but they either didn't quite cover, or I thought they would win by less, and then they did cover. And so it was like a close week in terms of what I expected to happen, but still just disappointing in the actual pick'em. But that puts Bryson in the lead, I think, for the first time all season. So late riser,
I think so,
nice
yeah.
job, Bryson. And we'll see how these last couple of games go. I think it's gonna be, it's close, but it's still gonna be tough to catch up. Just the way that it's structured with so few games left. All right. Big thanks to Noah Ashley. Also, he's not with us today, but preparing all of our graphics. Appreciate you, man. Thank you. First, we have Seahawks plus 9.5 at the San Francisco 49ers. This is a pretty big spread for a playoff team that has its starting quarterback against a team that doesn't have its starting quarterback. So they're clearly pointing at its talent differential here. And I don't think the Seahawks are bad at all. I mean, I don't think they're as deep or as talented of a team, but this is a little bit of an unusual spread for Wildcard Weekend, where pretty much everybody's healthy on the underdog. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this spread is more indicative of I think the talent difference in the sense that if you look at the 49ers roster, there's no question as to which roster is the better. The only question you have about the 49ers is in fact that quarterback position where they are on the third string quarterback. That being said though, it might, the 49ers are so good right now, it might not even come down to him or come down to what Brock Purdy does. Their defense has been stout. Their defense has been stout in the two previous matchups this season against Seattle. And so if you take away like the garbage time scoring that came in the second game, you've got basically the 49ers have essentially held the Seahawks to 2 touchdowns in basically 120 minutes of football. So we're talking about a team that's got the Seahawks number. Now moving into, like, we're talking about playoffs. boy, man, it's hard to go against Shanahan in the playoffs because when he makes the playoffs, they always win games and they cover spreads. He's 5-1 against the spread in his two playoff runs as a head coach with the 49ers. So I'm tempted, and I'm more than likely going to go with the 49ers minus the 9.5 here. My one reservation would be the weather because it is raining really, really hard right now in Santa Clara. And it's kind of now shifting to where by game time that may have passed. But if it is raining really, really hard, I might just pass on the game as in terms of betting, just because that the weather and heavy winds can easily make this a lot more feasible for the Seahawks to cover. But for now, I'll take the 49ers minus 9.5, and then I'll pass it to Brison and then see if I've got any props to go along with this.
I've got the Seahawks covering in this game in large part because I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both defenses are going to step up in this type of environment, and in that, when it's a low-scoring game, it's really hard for a team to beat another team by 10+ points. And in large part, I'm not trying to discredit Brock Purdy because Brock Purdy's not like most of these third-string quarterbacks we're going to be playing today or we've seen throughout the season. He's actually been very, very good for the Niners. And what's funny is this Shanahan offense seems to make every third-string quarterback look like a starting quarterback in this league. Like, it doesn't seem to matter who you are. If you're somewhat competent and you're playing for Kyle Shanahan, you're going to look really good on this roster. But in large part, he's still a third-round rookie. He's Mr. Irrelevant. He's playing in his first NFL playoffs. I'm banking on at least one, maybe two, just rookie mistakes in these type of high-leverage environment situations for him. And if there's a weakness, I use weakness in very loose quotes for the Niners defense, it is against the pass. They have a really good safety, but the overall corner play for them has been a little bit shoddy down the stretch of the season. They are 20th in the NFL in passing yards per game defensively. And with Geno Smith, he's played at a high level this season. They have DK, they have Lockett, they have Noah Fant. They have a lot of really good weapons for the Seahawks offense. I think there's a chance Geno can keep them in this game. A lot more just like chances for the Seahawks passing game to get something going. The one caveat to that is if they can hold up against this Niners pass rush, if they can contain Bosa a little bit and give Geno some time in that pocket, I think he has a chance to get some scoring going in this one. But I think it's going to be a low-scoring game overall. I think both defenses are going to play very, very well. And with a third-round rookie at quarterback, I'm not banking on him throwing for 3+ touchdowns. And so if it's going to be low scoring, I like the Seahawks' chances to just keep this within 10 points. And it's really hard to beat a team 3 times in the season. So it's the Seahawks are going to come into this. They're going to want to give their best performance. Everyone counted them out before the season even started, and they're in this playoff situation. So I think they're going to want to play their best football. So I do have the Niners winning this game, but I think it's going to be closer than people think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Pete Carroll's won a lot of playoff games himself. So this is definitely a matchup of experience in the postseason. Now I have to ask myself, do I want to go against Brison just for the chance to try and beat him in the standings, or do I want to just continue to stick with my gut and if that means second place? Because I think you're far enough ahead now that I'm going to have to start making intentional decisions to go against you if I want that to happen. The only problem is I agree with you in this game. And because the spread is fairly large, I'm going to take the Seahawks as well. I don't know if I necessarily expect Brock Purdy to make a number of rookie mistakes because I don't think that the Seahawks defense is like super confusing. I think that, he'll know what to do. It's really just going to be about, does everybody execute effectively? Is Christian McCaffrey able to just shake that one tackle that means he just ran for a 67-yard touchdown, or does that go for a 7-yard gain? Because it's going to be the little things like that that will really decide how different the score itself actually is. I do expect the Niners to win just like everybody else, but I think that they can keep it to, even if it's a 2-score game, I think that it'll probably still be under 10. So I'm going to roll with that. Man, I'm going to go back and find the audio from one of our early podcasts of me talking up Brock Purdy before this is done, before the playoffs are over, and I'm gonna play it live on air so that I can pat myself on the back for that, because the guys they were making fun of me. They're like, okay, all right, Max, like this is preseason. I was like, I don't know, man, I don't know. He looks good for what he is, but.
And then I do want to add, I did have a couple of props that I think are worth mentioning. I would load up on McCaffrey in this game. I think especially if the weather does turn out bad, this is going to be a heavy McCaffrey game. And I know we're using DraftKings odds for posting them right now. If you go onto DraftKings right now, they're giving out the bonus of if he scores a touchdown, it's plus 100. And so I was like, it's at minus 145 if you take it without the bonus. So I mean, just take the bonus and you bet $1, get $1 back. So I mean, I'd say take that bet. I'd also take him over his longest rushing, or his longest rush being 16 and a half. I think he's going to break at least one that's 20. So I'd take that as well. And then I think his rushing yards total is at 77 and a half right now. I would also take that because I think this will be a heavy McCaffrey game, just in the sense that I don't think they want to put too much on Purdy, and they haven't been putting too much on Purdy this entire season. So establishing the run, Seattle's given up a lot of rushing yards to the 49ers in the past 2 games. So I don't see any reason that suggests that wouldn't happen again.
Yeah, I was just about to mention, I'm with you on loading up on McCaffrey. I like his rushing and receiving yards. It's at 118 and a half right now. And he's not going to just get his usage on the ground. He's going to catch a few passes and go for a lot of yards in that respect as well. He's just as effective in the passing game as he is in the rushing game most nights. So I think even if he gets like 70 rushing yards in this game, he could break for 50 receiving yards. And then you've got that over there. But then along with the DraftKings special of McCaffrey scoring a touchdown, they do these weekly specials for these games. I love the Kittle to catch a touchdown and McCaffrey 75 plus rushing yards. It's at plus 300. Kittle has been Brock Purdy's like favorite target, especially around the red zone. Who wouldn't have Kittle as their favorite target around the red zone? He's a big body. He's one of the best tight ends in the NFL. I think as soon as they get down in the red zone area, they may look to pull a fast one on the Seahawks. They're loading up for McCaffrey, and then Kittle's just wide open in the back of the end zone. So I think taking that is a really, really good play as well.
And I'll just jump on that as well. I think that's a really good thing to parlay, because if you look, he had 2 touchdowns in the previous matchup against Seattle, and he's had 7 receiving touchdowns in the past 4 games. So like like the 49ers are scoring and they're looking for him.
Yeah. So good calls on both of those. I definitely agree with you. I don't think it's gonna be as low scoring of a game as you guys think. I think the 49ers have talent all over the place, and the Seahawks have big playability. So, that anytime you can go over half the field in one play and score, it adds an element to your game. I think that is, aside from just Geno's play, I think that is probably the single biggest reason that they are in the postseason versus just missing it 7 and 9 or whatever the case is. Because they're not a complete roster. Offensive line is better. It's still young, still a little shaky. Defensively, they don't have a great pass rush, but their ability to score from deep outside of the red zone, it's important, which is why I think this game will be closer than the 9.5 point spread. All right. Chargers and Jaguars. Chargers are minus 2.5 in Jacksonville. Jacksonville gets to host their own playoff game for the first time in a while. Good for them. I think the Jags are, I don't think it's really any question. I think they are hotter even before week 18, where the Chargers did not rest their starters in probably a timely fashion. And now definitely the vibes for Jacksonville are different than the vibes for Los Angeles, where, there's a lot of question about why didn't you rest your guys? Are you risking injury? Like, a lot of the things you said were really important with the analytics. You're like backed off on. So what's your real belief on it? And look, I think there are legitimate questions. I also think that it's fine for somebody to adjust their philosophy in terms of coaching. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. But regardless, I do think the feels around these two teams are very different. One's on the rise, even though maybe Trevor Lawrence didn't have his best game in the win and in situation in 18. He did it. He's there. His first playoff game. I think this is a pretty good matchup, and I understand why the Chargers are favored, but neither of these two teams have playoff experience. And I mean, as far as coaching goes, even though Staley does have playoff experience with the Rams, he doesn't have head coaching experience in the playoffs. Doug Peterson does. So, these are probably honestly, full disclosure, I think this is my favorite matchup of the week, just from like what I expect to happen and what I want to actually physically like watch happening in front of me. But I think the spread is probably pretty solid. I think I know who I'm going to choose just because of the underdog status. But I'm going to see if you guys talk me out of it here, or if you make a case that I should go in the other direction. Kyle, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of second that thought in the sense that in terms of trying to come up with like thinking of a game script of like what I think's going to happen, there's a wide range of possibilities with this game, mainly because again, we haven't seen these teams in the playoffs, and with these quarterbacks in the playoffs, a lot of these guys, this is their first opportunity in playoff games, so that increases the variability. I'm so tempted to take the Jacksonville Jaguars in this game, mainly in spite of the Chargers, because if you look at the Chargers' strength of victory this season, it is laughably low. It's the worst of all the playoff teams, and so they've literally just gotten by with the fact that they had weak opponents on their schedule. And I don't want to. I thought about playing into the fact that their week 3 matchup when these two teams met, but then I was like, again, that's right off of Justin Herbert suffering that really bad rib injury, and the Chargers were just all sorts of banged up that game. So I don't necessarily want to use that game as a full-on reference, because again, that was basically hence a season ago. But I'm gonna go with the Chargers -2.5 here. I think the fact that they have at least they're getting Joey Bosa back is gonna play big dividends for them, because they have to generate pass rush. I understand Lawrence gets the ball out faster than I think most of the quarterbacks in the league, but I think the fact that Bosa is now back in there, it helps stabilize their passing game or pass rush, and then also makes their run defense much more able to key in on Travis Etienne. Meanwhile, I think the Chargers, obviously Mike Williams being gone hurts, but Keenan Allen's more than capable of taking over a game on his own. And then also Joshua Palmer's been awesome for them whenever Mike Williams and even Keenan Allen have been out. So I think I don't feel great about this game again. There's a lot of variability to this game, but I'm going with the Chargers -2.5 here.
I'm going to take the Jags to cover here. I like them enough where I think they're going to win this game, but I think the Jags are playing with so much momentum. That's a real thing in sports when you go into the playoffs with momentum, and one team's going into it with such. I mean, they hit a real low, the Chargers did, with this last week where they lost Mike Williams. I think that's going to be a bigger loss than people are thinking. I think he's a big body. He's a deep threat wide receiver. He makes big plays for them every game. Justin Herbert loves throwing to him on those deep one-on-ones, go routes. He's throwing to him pretty much every time. And then Joey Bosa is back, but he also got hurt in the game against Denver. He got hurt early in the game, didn't play the rest of the time. It doesn't seem to be something that's going to overly bother him in this one, but whenever a guy like Bosa, who suffered a lot of injuries in his career, just has something pop up in a meaningless game like it was a week ago, you get concerned if you're the Chargers, in my opinion. And then I think it's really funny. I've been hearing a lot of people with this game talk about how can you bet against Justin Herbert in this matchup. Justin Herbert's the clear better quarterback. Do you know that they have the same number of passing touchdowns this season, and Trevor Lawrence has less interceptions? Like, Herbert has 600 more yards than Lawrence, and that's really the only thing Herbert's overly beating him in. Completion percentage, very similar. Rating, very similar. So I think this quarterback matchup is more even than people are giving them credit for. And then, yes, neither team has a lot of playoff experience or none, but Doug Peterson has a ton. Doug Peterson has coached in a lot of playoff games. He outcoached Bill Belichick in a Super Bowl. I think if he can outcoach Belichick and the Patriots in a Super Bowl, he can outcoach Brandon Staley and the Chargers in a wild card game. He has this offense for the Jacksonville Jaguars playing at such a high level. Everything just looks so easy for them. And this Chargers defense has been very underwhelming this season. This was a defense people thought was going to be one of the best in the league when they brought in J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack. And Mack's been good. Bosa, when he's in, he changed that defense a lot. But I think this defense is very underperforming. They have no J.C. Jackson in this one, which is going to be huge for the Jacksonville offense. I think just overall the vibes in Jacksonville are so much higher than they are in L.A. And I think they're going to be writing that with this home game. I think Lawrence is playing at such a high level. He's looked like a top 10, maybe even sometimes top 5 quarterback over this stretch of his really good play. And I think he's going to show that out against this Chargers defense today. And I think if the Jaguars don't win, I think they are good enough to keep it a 2-point game. So I have the Jaguars covering this one.
Yeah, I say unfortunately because you're not really giving me much of an opportunity to come up in the standings. But yeah, I agree with you. I want to take the Jags as well. I think these are two closely matched teams. I do really like Doug Peterson and his playoff experience. I like the development that I've seen over the course of the year from Trevor Lawrence. I think he's been in a lot of big games too. I think that's a thing that you can't understate. Look, college is not the NFL, but he has been in multiple college football playoffs, including a championship. So like, you know, he maybe didn't have the greatest game ever the last time he was in the college football playoff, but realistically, the defense let that team down way more than Lawrence did. So Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence are just a more enticing playoff pairing. And I would say that Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler are the two best skill players in this game. So they're both on the Chargers. But when you look at the full complement, I don't think that the Jags are really that much farther behind because they are a little bit deeper. They have more viable options, I think. And yeah, I'm going to go with the Jags here because I think that they're going to surprise. I think that they're hotter. I think that it's close. And at the very least, if this is a 1-point game that they lose, I've got the spread to help me out. So I think they'll win, but I'm going to take the Jags as in this specific spread. So do you guys have any props or anything that you want to throw out in this game before we move along?
I was just looking it over. This is kind of a hard one. I would probably take Joshua Palmer. It's sitting at 49.5 receiving yards. He's probably going to be a very high target guy tonight. So I would anticipate he's going to get close to 5, 6, maybe 7 catches, and he usually averages around 10 yards a catch. So I mean, there's a good possibility he gets up to 50 yards. And I did see this note yesterday when I was looking over this game. It was kind of this funny random note where Trevor Lawrence hasn't lost a game in his on a Saturday in his entire football life. Like high school, college, and NFL, he has not lost a game on a Saturday. And I was like, that's actually kind of wild when you think about that.
Yeah, it is.
Random stat, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really fun one to keep track of. Again, like the Christian McCaffrey one, I like Austin Eckler on his over rushing and receiving yards. It's at 94.5. He's very similar to McCaffrey, where he's just as effective in the passing game as he is in the run game. This might be another game where he gets like 75 rushing yards, but I'm willing to bet he's going to get about 20 plus receiving yards in this game because he's used out of the backfield a lot. So I think that's a really good one. I also like Evan Ingram's receptions at 4.5. I know the Chargers do have Derwin James in the secondary there, but Evan Ingram has quickly become like Trevor Lawrence's favorite target. He throws to him a ton, especially around in the red zone. So I also like his touchdown prop. It's at like I think he's at 225 or something like that, 255 to score a touchdown. So I like Evan Ingram a lot in this game as well.
I'm more in on Eckler than I am on Palmer. And I don't know if there's what the prop is for Justin Herbert on rushing yards, but if it's not crazy,
It's 7.5. That might.
that you got to jump on that.
Yeah, I was
That's a good
just
one.
not looking at that too.
This is a game where he's going to use his legs. Like if necessary, he will. I mean, I would look. Honestly, I suspect he'll have more than 7 rushing yards on the first drive. So I would just throw that out there.
And if you want another fun one, like a sneaky one, not a lot of people are going to bet on him. Jermichael Hasty is at 11.5 rushing yards. He gets more carries than people think. And the Chargers have the 28th ranked rush defense. So he's going to get a couple carries here and there. I think 11.5 is way too low for him.
Yeah, it's just because he does passing game stuff too. But yeah, that's probably a good one. But you got to jump on. What's Trevor Lawrence's rushing yard?
13.5.
Jump on both of those. They will both have more than 15 yards rushing, even if it's not 40. Like they will surpass those. Those are easy for me in a playoff game where the quarterbacks are mobile and willing to move. Even though they would both prefer to throw the ball, there will be a point where at least one of these guys is gonna have to use his legs because the defense has it locked down. All right. Like I said, this is a fun one. 2 guys we've never seen in the playoffs before going head to head. It's a battle of the hair.
I saw this one stat. ESPN was working on finding a guy to calculate if this was the most hair in a quarterback matchup in playoff history. I thought that killed me.
Probably true. I mean, Brady had long hair at one point. So did he ever go up against, did any other quarterbacks have long hair? I mean, I know Gabbert had long hair, but I don't think he ever made the playoffs. He didn't make the playoffs ever.
Yeah.
How long I don't know. He wasn't in that year.
Who would have been? I'm trying to think of anybody that had long hair during Brady's long hair stint that he could have potentially played in the playoffs. That it was such an outlier for Brady to have long hair at that time. I can't think of anybody.
No, because most of the time he was facing Manning or Roethlisberger,
or Phillip Rivers,
or Phillip Rivers. So it's like all those
Palmer.
are short hair. Those are all short hair quarterbacks.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a funny stat. Probably true though. Even though to be honest, neither of their hair is really that long, but NFL quarterback standards, it is. Okay. Dolphins at Bills. I mean, I hate to say it, but this game is definitely, turn it off at halftime potential. It stinks. And I want to believe in Skylar Thompson. I would love to, just by the principle. But this is a tremendous defense. It's a tremendous offense. They're emotionally very high right now. It's a division rival who they would love to stomp in the playoffs. I can't think of a reason that the Dolphins have any realistic shot in this game. So it's up to you guys to convince me otherwise if you so choose. But like face value, this is a massive mismatch.
Yeah, you won't get any disagreement from me here. I'm taking the Bills minus 13.5 here. I'm actually shocked that it hasn't moved past the 2 touchdown line at this rate, especially now that we know it's going to be Skylar Thompson.
Well, Vegas already knew. That's why I would say that.
Yeah, I was like, I'm surprised that the action still hasn't been pushing there because I think it was 10 when there was thought Bridgebar would take it, and then it jumped to 13. And now I'm still kind of surprised that's sitting at 13.5 because I still think that's good. That's incredible value for a team that literally had to skate by against the Jets in the final game with Skylar Thompson, like 9-6 just to make the playoffs. So I don't see any reason why the Bills wouldn't be able to cover this game and probably cover it comfortably. So I would take the Bills minus 13.5 here. I just don't think you're gonna get anything from Skylar Thompson. And on top of that, you have Tyreek Hill's kind of banged up right now, so their most explosive weapon is also kind of isn't at 100%. So I think the Dolphins are just happy they made it into the playoffs, and now the Bills are going to show up and show out with what playoff football is about.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a easy win for the Bills. I'm taking them to cover this one. They may take a 14-point lead by the end of the first quarter and just never let go of that. I'm finding it so hard to envision Skylar Thompson leading a scoring drive against this Bills defense. They're not only are the Bills defense playing really well, but Skylar Thompson has struggled in the games he's played in. You saw that last one, a 9-6 game. Like I can see them scoring about 9 points in this game. That seems realistic for them. And the Bills are just going to walk all over this Miami defense, which has been up and down at times. It's been more disappointing than good this season, I would say, especially in the secondary. They've been banged up in the secondary all year. That didn't help, but they are really bad in that regard. I think Josh Allen's going to have a field day against this defense. And I just think it's going to be – I know I took the Seahawks to cover their spread in large part because I mentioned it's a division game. It's hard to beat a team 3 times this season. The Bills didn't beat the Dolphins early in the year, so they're not beating them a third time. They are playing them their third-string quarterback. Things changed over the season. But even in a divisional matchup, even playing each other a third time this season, I find it very hard to convince myself to take the Dolphins to cover the spread. I think it's going to be a really easy game for the Bills. And I think I saw the stat that the Dolphins have lost their last 7 straight road playoff games where the weather is going to be like below 30 degrees or something like that. And there's a chance it's going to be that cold in Buffalo for this game. So if it's that cold, it's going to make life even more difficult than it already is for the Dolphins. So I'm going to take the Bills to cover the 13.5 points.
Yeah, I can't think of a reason. I really can't. I think that they could score because they do still have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I mean, it only takes just the right angle to have 2 touchdowns out of that. But the thing is that based on the Bills' defense and their ability to score almost at will when they're in a groove, I don't think two touchdowns for the Dolphins almost means anything. You know what I mean? Like this could still easily be a 2-touchdown game. The problem is that, do those 2 touchdowns come early and allow the Dolphins to play complementary football, or are they down already by 18 points when they score their first touchdown? And is the defense, gassed? Are they, downtrodden? I don't want to say they'll give up, but it's like, you've seen it. You've all seen it. When defenses have an offense that can't do anything, eventually they get tired. Eventually they start to make mistakes. And, I don't want to say the Dolphins can't score, but I don't think they will be able to keep pace. I mean, heck, we saw the Bills go toe-to-toe with the Chiefs offense last year. So it's like, if that's what Josh Allen looks like in these playoffs, it's not even close. It's just quite simply no chance. And, maybe we'll be talking about next week about the upset of all upsets, but I'm more than willing to roll with the Bills and take the swing on that. All right. Did you have something you wanted to talk about with the props there?
I mean, the only 2 props that I would focus in on is, especially if we're anticipating it being a blowout as much, like Devin Singletary and James Cook's rushing totals are very, very low. 46.5 for Singletary, 37.5 for Cook. If it is that big of a spread, expect a lot of rushing. And I would anticipate if both Singletary and Cook get close to 10 attempts per game or 10 attempts each in the game, they'd both surpass their totals.
Yeah, I like those a lot. I also, there's one of the fun ones I like in this one is Diggs' longest reception. It's at 24.5 yards. I think that's a pretty easy one for him to hit. I think that's kind of low, honestly. It seems like every game I watch the Bills play, he has some 50-yard touchdown where Josh Allen just heaves it down the field as far as he can and lets Stephon go run right under it. So I think that's a really good one for me. And then I like Allen's rushing and passing yards. It's at 313.5. It could be a lot considering this could be a blowout and he stops throwing the ball, but he could also get heavily involved in the run game. He has led this team in rushing yards multiple times this season. I think this is one where he might early in the game get involved in the run game and just the yards start to pile up on the Dolphins. So those are my two favorite plays in this one.
I don't know if I'm necessarily in on the Bills rushing just because I think either one of those guys could come close, but like I'm not sure if I want to bet the over on him necessarily. I would definitely take Josh Allen though, because he will throw the ball. And yeah, he might not be running it like crazy in the second half, but it doesn't take him a lot of rushes to combine for 313 yards against a less than stellar defense, especially because I don't think the Dolphins are just going to, roll over. I think they're going to go try and get after him. I think they're going to try and make his job difficult. And he can beat you with his legs, which he will do, but I don't think that they're just going to be like, all right, let's just, let you pick us apart. I think they're going to try and do something. So, I think Josh Allen's going to have a great game. That's what's going to lead to this blowout. So taking the over on him, I would definitely roll with. All right. Back to another close game. The New York Giants against the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings are hosting the Giants as 3-point favorites. They are pretty healthy, I would say. I didn't really comment on it much for the Bills Dolphins because I don't think it matters necessarily that much. I mean, Tua's out, Mostert's out, Bills are pretty healthy. It's just another reason that I'm confident in the Bills. But teams are relatively healthy here. Giants have nobody on the injury report. Minnesota has a couple of guys questionable, but I think the key players should all be there. Justin Jefferson versus Saquon Barkley. Can we? I know this is a massive oversimplification, and we try and do a little bit more in-depth analysis here. But with the seasons that they've been having, they are probably the most important player on either side of the ball for both teams. So normally you would say that would be the quarterback. I don't think you would say that for either team here, which makes it interesting. Which guy has the bigger game? Who scores more? Kyle, what do you think?
I am actually going to go with the Giants +3 here. You're giving me the key number of 3 here, and in all scenarios, the Vikings seem to win these games close. And if they're gonna win this game, it's probably gonna land somewhere around 3 or 4 points. So, if it was 2.5, I probably would have leaned more towards the Vikings, but it's at 3. I feel comfortable with the Giants here. I understand that the Giants have Daniel Jones. I know that I don't need to. I know he's not that great, but here's the thing: he probably had his best game of the season against these Minnesota Vikings. And I know we don't necessarily always play into previous matchups, but these teams just played basically 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I think there is value in at least some recency bias with this matchup. I also think that I would imagine this is going to be a high yardage game. So, I mean, like you talk about like Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson had a great game for the Vikings that game. But oddly enough, you had 3 Giants all get over 75 receiving yards. So I'm not sure if that's going to be if it's going to be as high yardage as it was that first game. But again, I think Daboll has done a really good job scheming up stuff and keeping Daniel Jones out of like the turnover prone plays that we've seen from him in the past. And against a defense that does not rate well against the pass, I'm more than happy to take a gamble with the Giants here and take the +3.
This game fascinates me because they put it at 3 points. And in my opinion, it almost doesn't matter who you're going to go with because I think the Vikings are going to win this game by 3 points. They have 5 wins this year where they won by 3 points. So I can totally see this against the Giants last time they played. The Vikings won by 3 points. So I can totally see it being another game like that. With that being said, I'm going to take the Vikings to cover the 3 points. I think that they are the better overall team. I think the Giants, I think Brian Daboll should be, if not the favorite, he should be at least a finalist for Coach of the Year with what he's done for this team. He's made Daniel Jones look good, which was really impressive. But I think one of the one of the things I'm more impressed with him is the fact they've been really good at taking the ball out of Jones's hands and still being effective. Like he's made Jones and this offense very turnover low. Like it was Jones's career low in turnovers, was really impressive. But in the playoffs, you're going to need your quarterbacks to make big plays. And as much as it like kills me to say this, because I don't think anyone's ever said this before, I trust Kirk Cousins to make more big plays in a playoff game than who he's facing. Daniel Jones never been in one. You never know how he's going to react. I think they're going to try their best to not lean on Daniel in this one, but I think Minnesota just has so many more weapons that can beat this Giants defense. I think they have more playoff experience. And I think that they're being at home helps a lot. And so I think the Vikings they're going to try and show people that they aren't a fluke, that they did win these number of games because they're a really good football team. I think they're going to come out and they're going to beat the Giants. It's not going to be by a ton, but I can see it being by 4 points.
Yeah. Finally, a game that I can pick against you, Brison. I'm going to take the Giants. I'm going to take the Giants +3 here because I think whether the Vikings win or lose, it will be close. But if they win by just under 3 points, then I get the Giants. And if they lose by just under or whatever, then I still get the Giants. I really like the Giants defense against this Vikings team because I think that Cousins has had some sneaky rough games. This is not the Jets defense, but they were able to keep Justin Jefferson to around 40 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. If anything even remotely close to that happens in this game, the Giants should win, I believe, because I don't think Cousins is so good that he can shred you. They have a pretty good offensive line in Minnesota, but the way that Thibodeau's come on in the season, the way that they like to blitz, the season Dexter Lawrence is having, Leonard Williams is still having a very good year. Adoree Jackson is in this game healthy, so Justin Jefferson may still get his, but I'm going to take the Giants here to cover, and I actually do think that they will ultimately win this game. So I think the Giants advance. Oh, sorry, Kitty. I think it's a matchup of coaching, and I'm not out on the Vikings coaching staff in any way, shape, or form. But I think that just what's happening in New York is pretty special right now, and I don't think they go far into the playoffs, but I think they've got one more week left in them. So Giants, it is. Any props for this game?
Yeah, I love Isaiah Hodgins. He's easily become one of their top guys since they got him from the Bills, and he's covered whatever the number has been posted. He has gone over that number since he started getting time with the Giants. So I think he's at 44.5 in this game. I would take that. He's at 3.5 receptions. I would take that. And he's at a touchdown, anytime touchdown at +250. I would take that. He's scored a touchdown in 4 of the last 5 games he's played in. So they are looking for him. And again, Giants don't have a lot of good Giants don't have a lot of good receivers. So he's getting opportunities. So I totally see an opportunity for him to score a lot and make a lot of plays.
That was a sneaky one. I did not expect you to pick Isaiah Hodgins in this game. I really like Saquon Barkley in this one on his over on rushing yards. It's at 72.5, which seems very, very low for this game. The Vikings have a pretty rough run defense. They're not great in that respect. And the Giants are going to, in my opinion, try and get this ball out of Daniel Jones' hands as much as they can and try and lean on Saquon Barkley. So I think he's going to have a pretty good game running the football. And then I can't believe I'm going to get Justin Jefferson at plus money to score a touchdown. I think that's a pretty given. He is Kirk Cousins' first, second, and third option throwing the football, especially on the important plays. And I think they get in the red zone, he's going to look at Justin Jefferson as often as he can. So getting Justin at plus money in this game without even a odds boost, not even a special for DraftKings, he was put at plus 100. He's the third favorite to score. I'm taking that every time.
I mean, that's crazy because if he doesn't score, there's no way they win this game. I mean, like the whole reason that they are favorites over the Vikings. I mean, it's only 3 points and they're at home, yeah, but like he is their offense basically. He's had an incredible season, leads all receivers in yards, and yeah, that is pretty surprising to me too. Plus money to score, 100%, because I think that even if they lose, like you still about as close as you can be to guaranteed to score. So
and then also another guy that I think is also kind of weirdly undervalued is Hawkinson. He also had a very good game against the Giants, and if he's likely going to see opportunities in the red zone in this game, and you can get him at plus 235 in the red zone. So I think there's a lot of value in the touchdown scores in this game for odd reasons, especially when these two teams have pretty well established go-to guys for this game.
Yeah, I'm not sure I would love the whatever the over/under rushing is for Dalvin Cook. I'd probably lean towards the under. I don't love this matchup for him running into that defensive line.
It's not on DraftKings now, but last night I looked at it, it was at 69.5.
I would definitely take the under on that for him. So yeah, they have a good front. Linebackers, and I know that they'll be investing resources to stopping Justin Jefferson, but still, I mean, the season that Dexter Lawrence is having, I don't think you're gonna run into him much. And then they've got some decent edge play as well. I think I'm comfortable taking the under there. All right. Anything else before we move on to our Sunday night matchup here? All right. Whoops. This is why I need Noah. All right. Ravens are plus 8.5 against the Bengals. Look, what to say about this? I mean, the Ravens are a well-coached team. They have some good players on defense. They have some good players on offense too. I mean, but their key guy is not going to be there, and the Bengals are playing awesome football right now. I think, again, not to bury the lead, but I'm not sure that this spread is close enough to really even make me sway. Like, I would need a little bit more to make me not pick pick the Bengals here to cover. So again, I'll leave it to you guys to convince me otherwise, but you would think that the betting odds in this or that the action in this would have moved it a little bit. So kind of surprised not. But again, we're still a few hours out. We're still over 24 hours away, so things could fluctuate. But at 8.5, how do you not take the Bengals to cover this game the way that they played?
Yeah, it is kind of funny because I actually have been going back and forth on this, oddly enough. As weird as it sounds, I'm going back and forth on this mainly because I think a lot of what Baltimore did was kind of just we saw. I'll preface this by saying we saw how Tennessee kind of laid down in the game before the Jaguars game and kind of get guys right, kind of get things set up for what they knew was likely going to be and what they knew was going to be a game against the Jaguars. I kind of feel like that's what the Ravens did against the Bengals. And if you take that example, then you saw that the Titans actually had a really good formula that almost got them the win here. And so I'm very, very tempted to take the Ravens here at plus 8.5. Mainly because they almost did cover the spread against the Bengals last week. If Sammy Watkins doesn't just fumble while trying to gain an extra yard or so, they would have actually covered that pretty large spread. So I see where this line is making me want to think. I will likely take the Bengals minus 8.5 here. It's just more or less I would trust the Bengals in this spot more with Joe Burrow than I would in Tyler Huntley, especially knowing that Tyler Huntley isn't going to be 100%. So I would go Bengals minus 8.5. However, if I turn around and see that the Ravens are going to have an opportunity to backdoor cover this, I would not be shocked because again, that's kind of what they've learned to do, at least with Huntley at quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the Bengals to cover here. I think that's a pretty easy one. The Baltimore Ravens averaged 13 points a game with Lamar Jackson not playing. And Tyler Huntley's coming into this not 100%. His shoulder is still bothering him. He missed last week because of it. He's been limited in practices going into this game. I think he had his first full participant yesterday in practice, so his shoulder's going to be bothering him, so he's not 100%. And this Bengals offense is just so lethal. I mean, even if you take away the quarterback disparity in this one, the weapons disparity in this one, in my opinion, is just as wide. I mean, the three receivers for the Bengals are all just, each one of them could be a number one for other teams, and they have all three of them on this roster. Then you throw in Joe Mixon at running back. You throw in Samaje Perine, who's productive for them. Like, this Bengals offense is just loaded top to bottom. Their defense has played pretty well all year. I'm struggling to find a way for this Ravens team to stay in this one. I know they're well coached. I know their defense tends to step up in games like this, but when the offense is just giving you next to nothing, it's really hard for me to realistically pick you to cover against a team like the Bengals going into Cincinnati. They're angry about how their end of the season has turned out because of certain situations. They want to win this game pretty easily. And I think they're going to do it. I think this is going to be a pretty ugly game.
I tend to agree. Look, the Bengals are not the best at any position group, but they are debatably the most well-rounded team in the entire NFL, led by one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Anytime you have that, you've got to have a team who has some dominant characteristic to win. And right now, without Lamar Jackson, I don't think they have a dominant characteristic. They have a pretty good defense. They have a pretty good offensive line. Their skill group is a little bit underwhelming, but without a dominant defense in this matchup, I just don't think they have a shot. And I know 8.5 kind of seems big-ish, but the reality is that's a touchdown and a field goal, and they could be up by 10 early in this game. And even though it might not ever stretch and get out of control, touchdown and a field goal that's an easy lead when I'm just stepping back at the Bengals and Ravens. That's all I'll say about this game, just because I don't really. These teams made it to the playoffs. I don't want to crap on them, but when you don't have your starting quarterback in, if you are not the 49ers or maybe the Eagles, you're just not deep enough to overcome against other teams who have very good quarterbacks. So if you're going up against Josh Allen, you're going up against Joe Burrow with your second, third string quarterback, it's probably just not going to work out very well for you in the postseason. So any other props or anything you want to hit on before we get to our final game of the weekend?
Yeah, there's a few that I like in this one. I like T. Higgins to score. He is quietly one of Joe Burrow's favorite targets down in the red zone. Even I think he targets him more in the red zone than Jamar Chase sometimes. I think in a matchup like this where the Bengals could score at will, they could score a lot of points in this one. I think T. Higgins finds the end zone in some way. And then this one scares me a little bit more, but I like J.K. Dobbins' over on rushing yards. I think with Huntley in this game, they're going to really try to get the run game going for him, make life a little bit easier. And Dobbins has been getting better as the season went along, as he's getting healthier. Obviously, that helps a lot. It's at 60.5 rushing yards, and it scares me because they could get out of this game pretty easily and they have to throw their way back into it. But I think they're going to try and get Dobbins going early.
Yeah, this is kind of a tough one in terms of props because we know how ugly the Ravens offense can get, and if this gets out of hand, then it changes. It makes a lot of the passing props, which is what the Bengals are known for, to be very, very unsavory. I think the only one that I kind of am looking at, mainly because he has not been good very often this year, is Joe Mixon under rushing yards. I know they're likely going to be up in this game. They're likely going to have to rely on him to run the football, but he has not been good this year. Like his per yard or yards per carry average is pretty bad in terms of how often he touches the ball, how how high usage he is, and he doesn't register a lot of yards. So 55.5, it is a little bit risky, but again, against the Baltimore defense that I think is going to be more attentive at, or going to be focused against the offense, I don't see an issue taking that prop.
And to go with that one, the Bengals really like Pirine. They might look to him to get a run game going just as much as they do with Mixon in this game. So the under on Mixon's going for that one as well. I like with that, the over on Pirine could be a good play too.
Yeah, I think when you look at the pass defense of the Ravens, they have good coverage guys, but who's going to be matched up where will matter. I think this is probably not going to be the biggest Tyler Boyd game because they will probably have Kyle Hamilton primarily matched up against him in the slot, and they like to run a lot of man, so that will probably be a consistent matchup. Then outside, I think we'll have a fair amount of Marlon Humphrey on T. Higgins and a fair amount of Marcus Peters on Jamar Chase. And just looking at those matchups, my leaning would be towards Jamar Chase. I don't know what his over-under is. I haven't checked on it, so you guys can tell me. But that's
76.5.
That's kind of high. But based on the way that we're expecting this game to go in terms of blowout, I would be comfortable taking that. I think we've kind of forgotten how good Jamar Chase is because he missed part of the year and he's not at the top of the league in receiving yards. You know, his fantasy season-long output wasn't as high, but Joe Burrow still likes to go to him. And so I think if we're looking at receiving options versus the coverage matchup, he's the one I like the most, even though Marcus Peters is still a good player. So I'm going to put my stake in him going over 76.5 in a playoff game. You know, I think that's all I've got really, because I don't want to sit here and just like bang the under for everybody on the Ravens offense. As I'm not really interested in doing that, but I definitely am not going to lean towards over for anyone there either. And I think that will do it for this game. All right. Oh, man. Final game of the weekend. We have the Cowboys and Buccaneers. So Cowboys, pretty good season. Wildcard team only means they are not at home for the wildcard round. They have to play the Buccaneers. They're favored by 2.5 points. Probably better team overall, but now you're asking me to pick against Tom Brady in the postseason, which personally I don't really love. I think if it was against anybody else, I don't know, because I don't love the coaching in either of these games. It's like I think of Mike McCarthy as possibly like a negative in playoff coaching, but then I'm like, okay, but he's also coaching against Todd Bowles. So how much does Tom Brady necessarily overcome that? Because Todd Bowles is a good defensive coordinator. Is he a great game manager? I'm not sure either of them are really good. So, you know, if you're looking for at you know, what does a field general do for you in this game? I don't know. This is crazy. Neither team has anybody on the injury report. Both teams, you know, didn't necessarily play everyone all game last week, which probably helped. Looking at you, Brandon Staley. but yeah, I mean, it's a close game. And I guess the better team is favored, but history tells us something. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I absolutely hate this game because mainly because it goes against a lot of, like, you have like your conflicting views in terms of, like, I agree with the fact that Dallas is the better team. I don't disagree with that. The problem is you have the history of what Mike McCarthy is in the playoffs. You have the history of that entire franchise of what they've been in the playoffs. And also, it's not like Dallas is coming in off the greatest game from the previous week. So you have all of that on the flip side, you have Tampa, who's not good. Like, they're not well coached. Their offense sputters for most of the game, and then Tom Brady pulls them out of the fire. And then, but I just said the reason why you would go with Tampa in this game. It's because of Tom Brady. So I absolutely hate this game just because of you have two conflicting views in terms of it goes against the historical trends and then also goes against what I've seen with my own eyes for this season. That being said, I'm leaning Cowboys -2.5 here. And the main reason why is my game, at least in terms of the way I see the game script going, is Dallas is going to get out in front and take the lead and more than likely hold on to the lead until the very end. And it's going to come down to a Tom Brady possession. Whether or not Tom Brady makes the play or not is where my mind is at. And at least right now, I think Micah Parsons and the Dallas pass rush is going to do enough to get them out of Tampa with at least a 3-point victory. So that's where my head's at. I wouldn't have any disagreements if you guys thought the game script was different though.
Actually, I think the game script's going to be very similar to what you said, Kyle. I just have Tom Brady getting it done in the end. I can see this it's going to be an ugly game. It's not going to be an enjoyable game to watch the entire time, but it's going to be something like 20-16 going into the last drive of the game, and Tom Brady leads them on a game-winning touchdown. That's just how I see this game going. Spoiler alert, I have the Bucs covering this one. Tom Brady's never lost to the Cowboys in his career. He's 7-0. The Cowboys are 4-4 on the road this season. They have not been good, not in Dallas. And Mike McCarthy has a 10-9 record in the playoffs. All of those are things that point me to taking the Buccaneers in this one. And Dak Prescott's coming into the playoffs playing his worst football. And I know this. He's thrown 7 interceptions. He's thrown an interception each of the last 7 games. That's terrible. I know this Bucs defense doesn't cause a lot of turnovers, but if you give Tom Brady even one extra possession in a playoff game, he's probably going to take advantage of it in some way, and that could be how the Cowboys fold in this one. I mean, I can totally see in this game Dak Prescott throws a pick. They're like up by 14 points, and it looks like the Cowboys have this thing wrapped up, and then Dak Prescott throws a pick, and now they're down 1 score. And then Mike McCarthy does something stupid where he goes for it on 4th down in the middle of the field and they don't get it. And then Tom Brady takes advantage again. So that's just, I see the Cowboys just making too many dumb mistakes in this game. And if you make the dumb mistakes against a Brady team in the playoffs, he's going to take advantage. Even if they haven't performed well all year, I still trust Tom and the Buccaneers in a playoff game more than I trust Dak and the Cowboys.
Well, it looks like either you're going to lead by only 1 point, or you're going to extend your lead by 1 point, or I'll make it 1 point closer because I'm also going with the Buccaneers in this game. And while I hate this game from a pick'em perspective, I can't wait to watch this. This is going to be fun. This is going to be fun playoff football. Even if it's a little ugly at times, the storylines are there. There is talent here. Mike Evans, he finally had a good game, and he's been so consistent over his career that I'm going to take that as a sign that he's heating up at the right time. I don't know if he'll go off, but that's a matchup that I would watch out for. And then Brady, I just trust more. Offensive line is not great over there, but I'm gonna take the Bucs. I mean, I even though they should be better, even though they should be favored by more, or even though it's in Tampa, just when you look at the overall talent of the players, the up and down nature of the Cowboys is not something I love. I've consistently been out on Mike McCarthy as a coach. I didn't come into it with like a ton of bias based on his Green Bay time because you don't know how a guy changes over time, what lessons he learned, but it just seems to me like there's a level of hubris there that it will cause him to fall in big moments like this, and I just don't think that they're so dominant that they will overcome that in this game. So I think that this is a loss for the Cowboys. I think that we will probably see coaching changes as a direct result of that, because 2 seasons making the playoffs and First one got shellacked in the playoff game. And I don't know if you got shellacked necessarily, but you mismanaged the end of it badly.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, if they lose again to a team that they're favored over, I think we see some fluctuation there. And I think if Sean Payton, he's starting to get those head coaching interviews, they'll make a major play for him right now, because we haven't really talked about it much since McCarthy's still there. As soon as that's done, expect that to dominate the news cycle for at least a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
Any other props or anything? Or are we calling it a day?
One thing I did like, or a couple things. I know I have one thing I like. The Dallas minus 1.5 at halftime is at plus 100. And again, if it goes according to way I think the game is gonna go, I could totally see the Cowboys having like a 10-7 lead or something like that, and you cover that way. So I think there's value in taking the Cowboys minus 1.5, because you also got to remember this Tampa Bay team is incredibly slow starting. Like they usually do all their damage in the second half.
Yep.
So if the odds are, which is why I can't kind of think the game is going to go this way, Dallas gets out in front, holds the halftime lead, and then they're holding on for dear life, trying to keep Tom Brady at bay. So I think the minus 1.5 halftime spread is worth taking with Dallas, especially at plus 100.
Yeah, this is a tough one to take props on, because I don't necessarily love anyone's over on yards or anything like that. I do like a defensive prop in this one. Micah Parsons to record a sack is at plus 120. The Bucs tackle play has been relatively inconsistent or injured all year. Micah Parsons, the Cowboys are gonna need their stars to make star-worthy plays, and Micah Parsons is a superstar. I think he's gonna find a way to get Tom Brady at least once in this game, even though it's tough because Tom does a really good job of avoiding sacks, not by dodging them or outrunning them. He just throws the ball away, or he throws the ball quick enough where he don't get them. I do think there's going to be a play, though, where the plays gets extended a little bit more than Tom wants, and Parsons finds Tom at least once in this game. And the only other real prop I love is I do think Mike Evans scores. It's at plus 160. He's coming off, like you mentioned, Max, an absolutely insane game, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he's going to find the end zone at least once in this game, and that could be how the Bucs win this game. A late touchdown to Mike Evans.
I like the Parsons and Evans prop. I like both of those.
And then there's one that I definitely am going to play because I've been playing it for the past month. It's Michael Gallup under his longest reception. It's at 18.5. He has not covered that in the past month. And he's also only covered that number 5 times this season. So I would say that's at 18.5. That's definitely a number I would take the under on. And then also another one that I'm looking at right now is Dalton Schultz's over for longest reception is 16.5. Again, he's only done it 4 times this season. He's only gotten over that number four times this season. And against a good Bucs defense, you're the odds of him getting something like that, especially if Dak's going to be under pressure, not very likely. So I do like both of those longest yards unders.
Yeah, those make sense as well. Someone's going to have a big play, but like estimating who, if you take the under for most of them, you're probably going to have a net positive if you want to roll that way. All right, so as it stands right now, according to these standings, Kyle, you and I are tied at 131, and Brison, you're in lead at 132. So we're first, second, third, right there, first and tied for second. This past week, Dr. Antonio Daniels led the week with 11 points. Brison, you were in second at 10, and then I was tied for third with Greg Simback, Philip Riggs at 7.5. And then Kyle, not your best week, so that's why you fell a little bit. Money week, 5 points off that. So again, I'll have to go back and look at what your spread picks were for week 1 when you didn't enter them into Gridiron, the play action pool. Brison, to say exactly how far ahead you are. But I will say, if you want to make it interesting, we could forego that and have a really tight playoff race.
I'm cool with foregoing it. You forego the one pick you forgot to enter earlier in the year. So
That's
I didn't have
one pick, but
I didn't have a stellar week 1, I don't think. I think we have all we all agreed it was like 4 points or 4 picks I got right that week. So I'm cool
something
with
along the
Yeah,
lines
something like that.
I'm cool with
So if you
foregoing
just want to make
week
it a
1.
more tense playoff run,
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's a way to
I'm
do
a competitive guy. I'm cool with doing that.
it. Okay.
Make it more tense going down the stretch of the year.
All right. Then we're if that's the case, that's fun, and we are not going to. Well, there'll be no asterisk. We can decide now.
Perfect.
However we want to do it. And then next week next year we need to just be better about, because I've forgotten to make other picks periodically throughout the year. Because usually if it's a primetime game on a Thursday or a Monday, I'll forget to put it in sometimes. But okay. So then it's a tight race. You're up 1 on us, and we'll just operate from that. But yeah, it's been fun throughout the course of the season, guys, and only a few left. Let's do it. Let's watch some playoff football. All right. I am Max Dean at the Max Dean on Twitter. You can find me there. You can find Defiant Takes Football on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere. The site is in development. Should be up and running soon for articles and the like. Kyle, where can people find you and your work?
Yeah, I am on Twitter at Kyle_Nishida, and then I've got stuff on Gridiron Heroics. Before we go, I'm just curious, who you guys think is the Super Bowl? Now, I know we made those picks at the beginning of the season, but now we have the field. Who of the field are you guys kind of leaning towards for the Super Bowl? I'll just go ahead and say I'm kind of leaning Chiefs 49ers, to be frankly honest.
With the winner?
I do think the
rematch?
Chiefs would win. Yeah, I think the Chiefs would win in the rematch just because finally the quarterback would catch up with the 49ers. But that's kind of where my headspace is at right now. I'm just kind of curious where your guys' feelings are at right now.
My Super Bowl prediction is long gone.
Yes.
Screwed that one up. That was a tough one.
I can't wait to go back and look at those. We're gonna do a show on that. So.
It's not gonna be fun. That's not gonna be a fun one.
It's gonna be a lot of me hiding and then like turning off the camera.
Same. But I've got the Bengals Eagles personally.
Okay.
I trust Joe Burrow in every big game in this playoffs. He has showed up every time I expect him to. And I think this Bengals team, like Max said earlier, is the most well-rounded team, especially in the AFC. And then I think the Niners quarterback matchup catches up with him in a game against the Eagles. I think both teams are extremely well-rounded on both sides. I think the Eagles quarterback with Jalen Hurts against Brock Purdy is huge, wide range of disparity there. I think Jalen Hurts is having an unbelievable season. I think in that game against a good Eagles defense, Brock Purdy makes 1 or 2 mistakes that cost them in that one. So I got Bengals Eagles with the Bengals winning.
Yeah, interesting. I'm going to keep my AFC competitor and winner in the Bills, and I'm going to I had the Rams as the NFC, so and losing, and I'm going to go with the Niners for that. I think they make it, but still lose. I still have my winner as the same as I did before the season, but I think the Niners are hot enough right now that they could overcome the Eagles if they play the Eagles in the conference championship game. If they get hurt along the way, I don't know, because offensive injuries will probably impact them maybe more than some other teams. But yeah, I'm going to take the Bills to ultimately win it. All right, Brison, where can people find you and your work?
You can find me on Twitter at Brison Owens 16. That's BRISON. You can see me both on Gridiron Heroics and a lot of my work on DenverSportsBetting.com.
Beautiful. Big thanks to Noah Ashley, our producer, at No Ashtray Sports on Twitter. Follow him. Check out his hot Colts takes. And we will be back on Monday with Kyron Samuels and Nick Merriam to recap the slate of games. Obviously, we are still we won't have finished the Monday night game, but I don't think we can push off. I don't think we can push off the recap till Tuesday, so we're going to recap the majority of Wildcard Weekend games. Until then, and until next week for you fellas, enjoy playoff football because it is finally here. All right.
Yes, sir.
Until next time.
Yep.